jump on. We could talk. Doobie doobie doo.
So for those that are just starting, like if you watch us on a replay, this is our countdown ish. So we're giving time for people to
One,
oh my goodness.
two. Yeah, let's hope this
Now you know
works.
why there's times that we have an actual screen doing this. So you don't get to sit here
story.
and look at us, but that's okay.
My mirror. My hair was. I was setting everything up so my hair is messy. Yeah. So when you sign in, let us know who you are. Just let us know
you're
who's
here.
with us.
Yeah.
So we can continue. We start our new Bible study today. We're really looking forward to it. We are on Facebook Live. We are on YouTube. And SA Life Church, although it might take a while to buffer on SALife.church, but we are on there. So those are really, really good things. So we are going to start here in about 5 minutes. So as you sign on, let us know who you are. Just say hey or hi. Jen, do you want to tell them if they're new to this, how they go and approve themselves to be able to be seen?
Yes. Well, that's not an option right now.
Oh, okay.
It's not coming up. So we'll see how that goes. Hi Carissa, nice to see you.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes with usually with Facebook with Ecamm, which is what we use to stream from.
Yep.
So usually we have a link at the top that says that you have to grant permission for Facebook to be able, for Ecamm to be able to see you through Facebook. So if you are if you're like right now, thank you Loie for saying who you are. If you've given permission before, you're already set to go. It shouldn't be a problem. But if you've never given permission, then we might not see you as a no-named person commenting. And so if we ask you who said that or what's going on or things like that, so like for instance, the person that said hi guys, not quite sure who that was, but that might have been Lois, because then Loie came on and said that she was here. So that might be you, Lois. All that to say, if on your feed, if it says about allowing permission, there's a little email, or not email, a little website address at the top. Click on that, give permission. Once you do it once, you don't have to do it again. But if you're not seeing one there, I'm sorry. When I go on, I can't see a link. So that might be because I've given permission already. I'm not sure. Yeah. So for instance, on our side of it, we can see that that Ashley's here, that Debbie's here. We can see that Carissa is here, but that we also now have a new person that said hi, and I'm not quite sure who you are. It's not recognizing, giving us a face for that.
So you see those stars now. That's where you come on favorites, so we know when people ask a question. Yeah, that's really cool. So we're really excited to have you, and if you've never joined us before, we really, really do enjoy getting together and doing a live Bible study. So you will, this is on our Salvation Army page, our church page, our SALife.church, and YouTube. So many different ways to tap in to do this and kind of go with us. And so I see we got Emily. So that's really, really good, which is really weird because I thought she had done it before. Yeah. So we will start right here at 2 o'clock. So
for our reference, is that Emily Kolpetzer or is that Emily Schultz?
I'm going to guess Schultz.
I'm thinking it's Schultz. And I know that you've given permission before, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
And Donna was another one that said hi. So thank you for saying hi. Not sure what's going on with that. You take a couple weeks off and the bugs come back.
Yes, and they did. They did an Ecamm update, Facebook update. They did all kinds.
They did all kinds of updates
behind the scenes.
So
but
now,
yeah, we're really excited.
Okay. So
me neither. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So okay. So it is Schultz.
Yep.
So on my feed. So this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna change this to be my YouTube feed, so I can see that.
Yes.
And
so in our 2 minutes before we get into our Bible study, so I want to ask a question. So everybody, if just kind of ask a question so we can get started. We always ask kind of a get to know you type question. So we've asked where you want to travel, what your favorite ice cream, what your favorite candy, all that kind of stuff is. So, what is your favorite title in life? Is it mom? Is it dad, sister, brother, cousin, aunt, uncle, husband, wife? What is your child, sibling, whatever? What is your favorite title to you in life? Mine is husband, of course. If you didn't know,
yeah, you liar. No, I'm just kidding.
I
I'm
don't really
kidding.
like you, so it's all good. So, but what is your favorite title? I'd say husband and pastor are kind of a tie, honestly. Yeah. So, that's kind of where I'm at. Pastor's kind of cool title. So, just answer that question and go, grandma. Yeah, that's cool. Grandma again. Yeah, that's awesome. Uh, my mom and dad really like being grandparents too, so I imagine that would be what their favorite title is. But as you're putting those favorite titles up, that'll be really really cool to see. Um, uh, you know,
Nana.
Nana.
That's from Diane.
And then Tabby said, "Mama."
To kids I didn't birth. Oh,
I
that's good.
it. Yeah,
that is true.
Yeah,
that is
really
true.
Cool.
That is special.
So our Bible study this time, I'm pretty stoked about because we're going to take a different layout because we're going to really dig into some really great biblical truths about forgiveness and dealing with what has happened to us and what we've experienced or will experience. And one of the most difficult things about this is that it is a journey. And sometimes when we go on a journey, once a week, this just doesn't seem to the hit the mark. So with this Bible study, we will meet on Tuesdays, but many days on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. We will be placing a question for you to interact with and for us to have discussion beyond Bible study. And it doesn't have to be at length or, maybe you're a writer and you want to go Holly Jolly Christmas on us. That is completely fine. For us, it will give us an opportunity to converse with you, see where your heart's at, see where you're going, and really great. And the Bible study group can come together, and if other people get in on the discussion, maybe they'll join us for Bible study. So pretty excited. What was that?
Leia says hi.
Aww.
And it's so good. I know that there's someone new on Facebook joining us. She goes by the title Once By, but she's one of the newer ones.
And her name is Lois.
Lois as well, exactly.
Yes, that's awesome.
So she might, you know what? That might have been the Lois that said hi earlier. We might have gotten you a little confused there, Lois, because now we have two Loises that watch.
That's awesome.
So hopefully we can figure out, like I said, because I have it up on my phone, I'm able to see kind of some of the no-named on our end and seeing who those are coming from. So
here we go. So we're gonna dig right in because every week we're gonna kind of go over some scripture, and then we're gonna go over some discussion questions and really take a journey together, because the truth of the matter is that hurt is real, and forgiveness is a biblical command, but it's not always easy. And so we want to dig into the scriptures and dig into how can I forgive what I can't forget? And so we're going to really dig into that. So we're going to dig into our slideshow here, and we're going to disappear, but we will be back. Stay with us. So here is the title, Forgiving What You Can't Forget. So obviously, if you have a random comment during it that you want to make a point or anything, please feel free to type it. Don't feel that you need to wait for a question to say what God's leading on your heart. We are here to facilitate this. We are not here because we're the experts and the only ones teaching. We learn from others as well. So
That's right.
We're gonna dig in here, and so today's topic is this: what? My wife's going crazy on us.
Sorry. I thought that would go into.
No.
Oh, it's up there. Gotcha.
Yeah. So
See,
here we
take
go.
your time off, and I forget.
Here we go.
There we go.
What am I supposed to do with all the hurt? And so in the questions, just put yes. Have you experienced hurt? I want to know if there's somebody say nope. Because I think that unified question will kind of bring us into the idea that we are all under that same umbrella of experiencing hurt. Okay, and each week we will have a statement to hold on to. And we'll do it at the beginning, and then most of the time come back to the end. So here is the statement we're going to hold on to during this Bible study.
I have no idea what's happening here.
My wife is not used to a magic mouse, so
there we go.
There we go.
All right.
Okay, here we go.
There we go.
So here is your statement to hold on to. Forgiveness is not made possible by our determination. Forgiveness is made possible by your cooperation with what God has already done for us. Okay? So forgiveness is not made possible by our determination. Forgiveness is made possible by your cooperation with what God has already done for us. And we're going to touch on that later. Okay? So as we dig in, here we go. That statement to hold on to. We touch on a story in Genesis chapter 4, the story of Cain and Abel. And Cain is obviously upset with Abel, jealous of Abel. There's all kinds of emotions going on there. And I paraphrased what verse 6 says when it says, when God says to Cain, Cain, why are you heating up all of your worries and frustrations to the point that you're filled with anxiety and depression? Right? You like his emotions. This is how we would describe with the heating up. He is now a hot mess. Okay, and God is addressing a hot mess. And I think oftentimes we could say that when we get hurt, we become a hot mess. All right, and when we become a hot mess, we sometimes you lose the beauty of the best versions of ourselves. And we're really going to touch on the idea of finding the beauty within ourselves in the hurt today. So that story of Cain and Abel in Genesis 4:6, and God questions Cain, why are you getting so worked up? Why are you allowing your emotions to control you? Why are you being so emotional? Okay, and sometimes emotions tell the truth about what we're feeling and what we're going through, but sometimes dwelling in our emotions can really, really be unhealthy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so as we kind of diggle there and we come back, we're going to jump into what does it look like to handle our emotions in order to move forward and be able to forgive what we can't forget that has happened to us in our past. And our we can't just sit here and say, well, my past is worse than this person's past, and this person's past, because it really is subjective. I might not have experienced the trauma that some of you have, but the most traumatic thing to me is the most traumatic thing to me. The most traumatic thing to you is the most traumatic thing to you. The relationship that hurt somebody, the relationship that hurt you may be a friend of somebody else in here, and so it really is a subjective thing when we talk about this idea of hurt. Okay, so
and it's interesting, and even in relationship, like people can catch us on good days and people can catch us on bad days, and I might hurt somebody in relationship on a bad day, but with somebody else, that's not their experience with me. I wonder if you've ever had that, where your interaction with somebody has been negative, and the next thing you know, someone else that you know is saying, that person is so nice, or they're so, and you're like, who are you talking about? Yeah. Because that is not, and sometimes years go by.
Yeah.
Like we've had someone in our life that we had habitual negative interactions with. But yet when you talk to somebody who knew them 15 years earlier, they were the sweetest person. They could see Jesus in them, and they were this great person, and it led us to go, what happened?
Yeah.
Because that is not the person that we came in contact with.
And understand, and we'll touch on this more. That's what when you become emotional and hurt and the lack of forgiveness run your life, you lose the beauty of who you are. Right. And that's going to be one of the things that we sit in today. So we're going to go ahead and go back, and we're going to touch on some more scripture here, just to kind of, so what else does God say about emotions? Right. And and here it comes out in Psalm 4:4. I like the ESV translation. Be angry and do not sin. Ponder in your own hearts on your own beds and be silent. So what is the typical reaction when someone is angry or hurt or lashing out? What is the typical reaction? It is spew, right? And some people bottle and then get to that point, but if we really kind of think about this, here is this the hard part. Go ahead and be angry, okay, but do it in the privacy of your own place, okay, and don't forget to shut up.
Yeah.
And let God speak. Now, some of you, like I said on Sunday, don't go look at the Bible. Shut up. No, it's not in there. Okay. This idea that when we're dealing with our emotions, the first thing that causes us to lose our beauty is when we lash out in response to our emotions and our hurt. And so what ends up happening is we end up hurting, we risk the potential of hurting more people and more relationships. And now we have more unreconciled and hurting relationships. So rather than just having to focus on one, we now have to focus on several.
And made a huge mess.
Yeah, that can be overwhelming. Okay. And so in the scripture in Psalm 4:4, when God says, listen, go ahead and be angry. So think about this. The Word of God does acknowledge anger as an emotion. Be slow to anger. Jesus was righteously angry. And here in Psalm 4:4, it says, be angry. Go ahead and be angry, but do it in the privacy of your own mess. And don't forget to take the time to be silent, to hear what God is going to say to you, what God is going to move in you, maybe even to reflect on what are the words coming out of your mouth and your mind.
Yeah.
Can I line this up with the Spirit of the Lord? Or is it negativity and poison? And sometimes evaluating our own words, we use the excuse, well, that's just the way I am. That's just who I am. You don't like it, deal with it. Here's the thing. People don't have to deal with your hurt and frustration and your emotions. They don't have to. That's called control. Okay? And that's called others' control. The only one responsible for dealing with your emotions and your hurt and your forgiveness is you. And so notice that God doesn't say, okay, be angry, go find somebody to unload on and let them handle it.
Yeah.
Right? He says, go into the privacy of your... Now, it is not bad to have people to talk to and circle people to go through and things like that. But oftentimes, we get it backwards. We go to people before God.
Yeah.
And here's what God's encouraging us to do, to take it before Him, to go into your own private place, into your bed. That's what it means. Go to the place where nobody else is. Right? Go to your sleeping quarters, your private, your prayer closet even, and take some time. Go ahead and be angry, but then also take some time to be still.
Yeah.
In prayer and meditation.
Isn't it interesting though, in how we can see spiritual concepts come into play in very practical ways that even the world tells you how to handle frustration and anger. Like think of the thing. What do a lot of counselors or psychiatrists or something tell people to do whenever you're angry? What's the first thing they tell you to do? Count to 10. Take a moment. Count to 10. Like take the deep breath. Breathe. Calm down. Take it. Don't do anything. My layman's term. Don't do anything stupid in your anger. Right? And so this idea of of going into that prayer closet, taking the time to be still before God, to just kind of not ignore the hurt or the emotion, but to not cause any more damage in that emotion, is something that we see even play out in the world. It's just a better way of doing the count to 10.
And I think of Family Matters. When Carl Winslow took the anger management classes, and he had to do it for all you Family Matters, thank God it's Friday type things, he would say 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3. What the heck is bothering me, right? So it's really good to take those moments, and I just want to be careful that we understand the truths of what God is feeling and thinking during our emotions. Yeah. God gives us a way out of it, and he gives us victory over them, and he wants to work in us to move us forward. Yeah. But if we are putting up boundaries where we are not conversing with God, we are not having communion with God, and we have some idea that God is somehow mad at us and won't forgive us, and we get our minds into this space that God won't listen to me. God won't do this. God won't do that. I'm too much of a hot mess because of what emotions you're experiencing. Then you're never going to be able to follow that idea of what he says. Go ahead and be emotional. Go and do it in private, and let's talk.
Yeah.
And there's the first thing. God, think about Jesus' life on earth. He dealt with some pretty mean spirits. He dealt with Pharisees. Yeah. He dealt with people that nobody else would deal with. He dealt with the lepers, right?
Yeah.
He dealt with Legion, with the many demons. The man who was possessed by many demons, and nobody wanted to go near him, and they thought he was all crazy. God is not intimidated by emotions, but God is moved by hunger after change.
Right.
And so it's one thing to say that to name all the things that are wrong in life, and every hurt that you've ever gone through, and every failure you've ever had, than to say, what can I do about it? What am I going to do about it? Because God is not afraid of your messes and your emotional things and your sinful things. He loves your greatest messes, but he says, bring all those to me. Yep. Let me deal with those. And he even does that again in Psalm 4:4, right?
And that's the thing. And even to kind of give a nod to a comment that Joni is making, for those that are on Facebook or on YouTube are unable to see Joni's comment, but she's talking about, that she, there's mistakes that we make, and we can even get mad at ourselves because of, we can't be that person. And I would just encourage you, from what even you just said, is God has a way forward.
Yes.
He has a way forward. And many times we can put ourselves into the box of, oh, this could never happen. And that's not biblical.
Yeah.
Because the Lord said that he forgives, and he redeems anyone that comes to him. And so just keep that in mind whenever you're looking at, maybe if we believe the truth that God that God will redeem and make all things good for those that are called according to his purpose. Even the mistakes we make, no matter how big or how small, he can make new. And that's what makes us different.
Yeah.
Is it one thing to acknowledge that I'm not the person I am today, and I have gone backwards in my journey with the Lord, where I was so much closer. That's okay to acknowledge that. But to try to get back to who you were, God doesn't want us to get back to who we were, because he uses and makes everything new. Better, he gives us another day. And so there's lessons that we were to learn that if we were to just go back to who we were, we'd have to learn those lessons all over again. Yeah. He restores and makes new. So please know that you can, it's one thing to acknowledge the mess ups, but it's the enemy that wants us to sit in those.
Yeah. And
God's desire is for us to go forward.
And one of the things that one of the speakers that Jen and I unify in listening to said at one point, that when it says that he's making all things new, it's not new in our mind. He's not refurbishing.
Right.
He is making a prototype. He is making something brand new that has never been seen before. Yeah. In you. And so take heart in that. And so there is a paraphrase in the Message translation that the Message paraphrase that I absolutely love of a scripture in Matthew that we're going to bring up. And I love this. This talk about handle your emotions. This is a, hey, guess what? This is going to be this difficult, okay? Well, here, we're going to read this first. I forgot about this. Sorry. Your love, O Lord, reaches to the heavens, your faithfulness to the skies. What is our focus? Here, God comes back and says, instead of focusing on your emotions, focus on me. Right? Yep. My love, my faithfulness. That's how you remain silent, when you trust in my love and my faithfulness, that these things are going to be good. And so we go back to, how do we handle our emotions? And like I said, I'm sorry, I skipped that one. But this coming up here, Matthew 5:42, listen to this. And if someone takes unfair advantage of you, use the occasion to practice the servant life. Love your enemies. Let them bring out the best in you, not the worst.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Right? That is crazy tough. You know, when somebody does something, takes unfair advantage of you, when somebody hurts you, when somebody disrespects you and misuses you, when somebody talks about you or says something to somebody else to get you riled up in your soul and your heart, and you're raw, all of a sudden you become Godzilla. Here's God. Yeah, when somebody does that, practice being a servant. Say what? You want me to do what? You want me to serve. Now, God is, when we talk about servant, we're not talking about let's go serve them a meal.
Yeah.
You know, we're not talking about, you know, let's go and clean their house. No, that's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful idea, servant. But God is asking you to serve the way that Jesus served. And Jesus served in everything in grace and love. Right?
Yeah.
And it just, and I thought of this week as I read and researched on this. Allowing somebody else's lack of control of their emotions to get you emotionally unstable is like having a choice between soft bread and moldy bread, and you choose the moldy bread.
Yeah.
You have a choice on what to do with your emotions. And one of the most difficult things to swallow when we are dealing with hurt and unforgiveness is that our journey is not dependent upon their emotions, right? It is not determined by their emotions or our efforts. It's determined upon what God has already done for us, right. What God has as an example for us. And so if you are in a hurt place and somebody were to come to you to try to give you healthy advice and say, look, I want to give you some advice in this, and you would say, yeah, but... when you insert that but in there, you are giving up the power that God has intended for you to have to overcome with self-control. You have now allowed somebody else to control you. Okay? And not only have they controlled you, you've lost your self-control. There's two different things. Because self-control can, when somebody else tries to control your emotions and your life and your peace and your joy, your self-control is strong enough to say, I know better. I know what to focus on. Mm-hmm. Your love, O Lord. Your faithfulness, O Lord. That's reaches right. to the heavens, right? And that comes out and brings us into a place of, how do I place myself in a spot to deal with the hurt? Is recognize that you are loved and you serve a faithful God first. But secondly, get other people's name out of your mouth. It's not mom and dad and sister and brother and ex and cousin and best friend. It isn't their fault.
Right.
They are being who they are being. And any effort for you to say, no, you need to be this way, you have now controlled them. And we don't like people controlling us. So naturally, they're going to respond negatively because we're trying to control them, because they don't like to be controlled. The choice you have is self-control. And we want to honor that.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. And so I love that, you know, servant
passage.
Life.
Yeah.
You know, let them bring out the best in you, not the worst.
Yeah.
because the worst of you is going to cause a bigger mess than I think that you really want to deal with, okay? And we're going to read a few more scriptures here. So we go back to Genesis 4:7 here in the next one. This is right after Cain, right? This is what God follows that up with. If you do what is right. If we take the translation of right back to its origin, it's to make a thing good or right or beautiful. Right? Whoa! If you do what is right. So if you fill that in, if you make it good or right or beautiful. This is how you handle it, Cain. This is how you handle it. If you do what is right, you're going to be good, dog. You're going to be good. Yeah. All right. So we move on here because I want to get into this question. So here we sit in our first question of the day. It's not uncommon for people to pull back and want to self-protect when they hear the word forgiveness. What are some of the reasons we may feel resistant to the idea of forgiveness? What are some of the reasons? Maybe you've experienced it yourself, or maybe it's just something you know or heard. But what are some of the reasons that we may feel resistance to the idea of forgiveness? Forgiving someone, forgiving a situation, forgiving you. Okay? Because forgiveness operates in you as well. You have to forgive yourself of some of these things. So as you type that, I hope you're going to type some answers so we get some feedback there. What are the reasons that people become resistant to the idea of forgiveness? The idea of saying, I'm just going to allow myself to claim peace and joy, even though that person might be a raging lunatic or Godzilla-type monster. But what are the things that prevent us from doing such things?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and giving people some chance to... I did put the question up on the live feeds there, so that way while your video is on us and we're talking, you can not forget what the questions are. So they're there, whether you want to do it as a reply or its own stream. But I think for some people, the enemy really warps forgiveness as letting people win. And when we're hurt, we don't like to let the other person win.
Yeah.
And so the idea, we might have a little bit of resentment towards the idea of forgiving them, because then that makes it can seem like, well, that just makes it okay. Yeah. And they get away with it. You know. All right, so we have a YouTuber with Lisa commenting, so I'm going to put hers up so that way those on Facebook land can see too. But she says, I think when the person or people continuing to do the thing or continue to disrespect and have toxic traits, that it is hard to forgive. I don't think you would be the only one to think that, Lisa. I think that falls along with the line with many people struggle with that, with the idea of forgiveness, definitely. So thank you very much for sharing.
I like that. I like, that's a true human thought process. It isn't always easy to operate in self-control, when others are being so bonkers.
And we do have, this is from Emily. I'm going to put this up so that way those on YouTube can see it. But Emily shares that the hurt is so deep that you don't want to and allow it to destroy you even further. You just don't want to forgive.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. I think that's a common one. Absolutely.
And I think asking ourselves, when you're resistant to forgiveness, do a role swap and ask yourself what your life would look like if Jesus took that vantage point of forgiveness towards us.
Donna shares holding on to the pain. That would be her reason, that she can see that. How could they even think that? How could they even think of that?
Right. So, yeah. Let's be real here. Just when I think that mankind has reached the pinnacle of vile, evil, unreal things that, we thought we'd never see or hope to see. I remember one of the biggest burdens was the shooting at the elementary school in Newtown, Connecticut. It was I remember Columbine, and I remember Paducah, and I remember all these high schools, and my mind was always burdened about them, and I read all the books about them.
Mm-hmm.
But when Newtown happened, the idea of elementary school, these kids that didn't have the emotional development or the social development to have issues to the level that maybe a more mature young adult or adult can have, that somebody will walk in and that's when people come up and say to you as a pastor, how can I forgive that?
Yeah.
That's so vile, that's so sick. And you just kind of step back and go, man, Jesus did a tough thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like, woo.
Lisa shared again. It says, and to be honest, a character trait of women versus men, we tend to remember things, and even though we may say we are over a situation, we still let it reside in our brain space. Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, that can definitely happen. And we see that, and that's why the part of 1 Corinthians 13 where it gives what the definition of love is that whole idea of it keeps no record of wrongs.
Was that meant for the women then?
No, it's meant for everybody, and but that's where you can really see how love and forgiveness can tie in.
Yeah,
because because I can forgive you, but I can't forget. And I don't know that we necessarily should forget, because sometimes we can offer forgiveness without someone ever asking.
Yeah.
And so therefore, if we are choosing to not hold on to the forgiveness for our sake, then we need to set boundaries, so that way they can't just keep abusing us in that way and hurting us over and over again. So there is something to be said in that. But I think, whenever you say that, Lisa, what I think of is, whenever, okay, it's all good, we're over it, but the next argument I get in, I bring it back out. See, you did this, and it's like this laundry list of things. And that's where I'm like, am I loving well? Because I'm keeping that record of wrong. And I say, it's over. I say I'm over it. I say, that's what I've said, but I'm really not. And I'm holding on to it, because if I see it again, I'm not going to just address that issue. I'm going to bring up the last one too. Yeah. Or the time before that.
And you're so blessed. You have such a perfect husband. You don't have to worry about that. Oh, I'm so funny. Well, let's go on to the next question, shall we?
Sure. With that, let's go on.
So here we go on our next discussion. Just to remind you, those of you who joined us a little bit later, on our Facebook page and our YouTube page, there are days we are going to post a personal question, so we could take this journey on more than just Tuesdays, giving you an idea, maybe some encouragement, opportunity to discuss and flesh out some things in your own life. But here, our next question: do you think forgiveness and reconciliation are a package deal? Do you think forgiveness and reconciliation are a package deal? If you have one, you have the other. Reconciliation and forgiveness. So for all of you Relationship 101 people who have taken relationship, this will sit in a pocket of something we've learned and we talked about. And so I'm hoping to see some Relationship 101 language in here. Our reconciliation and forgiveness a package deal. Reconciliation being healing and making things right. Okay. So reconciliation, making things right. Healed is restored. So there's reconciled and restored. Reconciled is making things right.
All right. So we have Lisa, who says she thinks yes, because of our human nature.
Okay. So there's a thought there. I hope some other people pop up and give their thoughts here.
Yeah.
Our reconciliation and forgiveness
Packaged
a
deal.
package deal. Do they go together? Do they coexist? Do they exist separately?
Go together.
Sorry. That's our fill-in time. While people
Giving people a chance. All right, so this one's coming from Emily over on Facebook. It says sometimes you're not able to reconcile because you cannot connect with them on a personal level, although reconciliation is very, very important. So for you, Emily, you're saying that they do not necessarily come as a package deal. Am I seeing that right? Correct me if I'm wrong in understanding that, but it sounds like you're saying that they don't come as a package deal. And over on Facebook, we have Chrissy says no as well. That they don't come as a package deal. Can you, if that is what you're saying now, Emily, you already gave a reasoning as to why you're seeing it that way. So maybe Chrissy or Donna, because Donna's posting for Chrissy, maybe you can give your explanation as to why your viewpoint is that way.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And it's really interesting. I love the fact that Lisa brings up human nature, because human nature can really have a great impact on the idea of hurt and forgiveness, and how we walk that journey. So I think we have some.
Yeah, well, Emily, that was just Emily saying that yes, we're understanding her correctly. That she is saying that no, they are not a package.
Yeah. So as please keep typing as you type. So, is it? Keep typing as I speak.
Keep typing as you type, because otherwise you wouldn't be typing.
Here we go. Reconciliation and forgiveness. So hypothetically, what if you're in a situation where you are willing to forgive the person, but they're not willing to walk in forgiveness or operate in forgiveness? Is there a difference between, does the package deal change in you if it's you personally versus another person? So maybe you're ready to forgive and they're not.
Yeah.
Can you reconcile something within yourself even though that person is not in a spirit to forgive or reconcile?
Yeah. And so Donna over on Facebook went a little bit further. She said, to forgive it only takes me, to reconcile it takes both.
Yes, I like that. Among each other.
And so I was gonna say, I think my answer would be to the question, is it a package deal? It would be yes and no. Sometimes in the act of forgiveness, it can be very much reconciling.
Yeah.
Because you are talking with them, and if the forgiveness aspect goes well, and there's an agreement that there was a hurt, there was a wrong, there was something that needs to be forgiven, and we can talk it out, work it out, then that's reconciliation as well. But again, if because like Donna pointed out there, or rather that was Chrissy through Donna, but just that idea of if because I decide whether I forgive or not. I can forgive somebody without ever talking to somebody. Some and those of you that maybe have had struggle with someone that has maybe passed away, and you're holding on to a hurt and they have passed away, then you have to forgive. You can't talk to them and work it out. They're gone, but you can still forgive. But reconciling does take both.
Yeah.
And the truth is, and this is what makes forgiveness hard, sometimes the other person that you're needing to forgive doesn't see that they've done anything wrong, doesn't see the situation the same way, and is perfectly fine with it breaking the relationship.
And remember, when God addressed people here individually, Cain, David, whomever he was speaking to, when he talked about where their emotions were, he didn't talk about the other side, right?
Mm-hmm.
He didn't talk about, he said, love your enemies as yourself, but remember your enemies are jerks. He didn't say that. He was like, I know you have enemies. Love them.
Yeah.
And according to Matthew 5:42, according to Messages, take it as an occasion to be a servant.
Yeah.
And so when God is dealing with people's emotions and hurt and lack of forgiveness, he is not saying, hey, that person needs to be in this for this to happen. for you to take on a servant mindset, for you to forgive, for you to not get stirred up in your emotions, that person has to be doing everything correctly. Because let's be honest and let's be real about human beings. There are some people who hurt people because they are hurt. Hurt people is what we often say. Yep. And what happens is it is going to take a cataclysmic move of God for their spirit to change. They need to heal. They need to reconcile. But if you're waiting for everybody else in your life to heal and reconcile, you're never going to heal and reconcile yourself. That's why God's saying, focus on you. Be self-controlled. When he said, Cain, okay, go get Abel before I tell you this. Because I want Abel to hear this advice too. No, he's like, Cain, I'm talking to you. And oftentimes when you try to talk to somebody who is in hurt and a lack of forgiveness, all they want to do is talk about the enemy. All they want to do is talk about the person that hurt and the hurt that they're feeling and the negativity, but they don't want to talk about the action steps and the difficult things to get out of it. And that's what God was saying to Cain. Cain, why are you letting your emotions get you to the point where you're anxious and depressed? Do you know who I am? I am the God whose love and faithfulness reaches to the heavens, right? And it endures forever. And so, dude, chill out. Yeah. But I didn't say, oh, now Cain, you're only going to get better if you go and you have if Abel will come in and agree with you.
Yeah. All right. So we got a couple more comments.
Yeah, I love it.
Over on Facebook, Lisa says, yes, she can find peace, but with people like that, it can be very one-sided, and it is usually when you have to step away and build those boundaries.
Exactly.
That's exactly it. And then we have a comment on Facebook through Chrissy says, you can be at peace with it through forgiveness, but to truly reconcile, you need the other person. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think also with forgiveness, there does come a personal reconciliation. Yeah. A personal healing, I no longer have that part of my heart taken up by hurt and bitterness and anger and jealousy and whatever else is folding into there. Like I said, God in Psalm 4:4 says, be angry, be emotional, but there's a way to do that. Yeah. And the way to do it is go and have a conversation with me. As much as I am a fixer and my wife is a fixer, we love to watch people get healed and get restored and everything to work out perfectly. But not every relationship that we have put our minds and thoughts and resources to have ended well. Yeah. And the ones that haven't ended well is when they're looking for people, and especially other people, to fix things that they need to fix within themselves. Right. And I don't like to see people hurt, and I don't like to see people anxious and depressed and all that. But I am not the sorcerer that controls your emotions, nor is God. Right. That's why he says, you be self-controlled. You know what your resources are. You know who I am. I've given you every reason not to be. Yep. So you have to develop within yourself. And I know sometimes that's difficult for me because my wife is the optimist and I am the pessimist. And so when pessimism, well, that's really hard to say. Pessimism comes in, it dominates. Yeah. And
it makes the optimist look loony.
Yeah. And I would go, and if I would go before a complete stranger that wouldn't know me, and they would listen to me and my pessimistic self, and then say, well, what do you do? Well, I'm a pastor. They're going to be like, really? Crazy, man. I mean, people do that sometimes anyway.
So we have, I'm not, sorry.
She's elbowing.
I'm not elbowing. I'm just letting my arm go. Sorry. That's elbow. Anyways, so Emily was able to give a testimony over on Facebook. She said she's had to place a lot of boundaries to stop letting hurt affect her so badly. And in doing so, she's found a new level of peace within herself.
Sweet. Yep.
So
Perfect.
Good
Perfect.
testimony. So thank you for that.
Let's go ahead and roll to our next question. I want to make sure we get some good stuff. So that's really great answers there. Thank you for sharing. In Genesis 4, God asked Cain to pull back from the emotions and do what is right. What did he do instead? Think we all know.
He did not do that.
Yeah.
Alex, for 200 points.
He got worse.
Yeah.
Right? So, if he didn't pull back on his emotions, what does pulling back from our emotions look like for you? And when I would say, what does it mean to pull back from your emotions? What does that mean to you? What does that resonate in your heart? What does that say? Well, to pull back from your emotions. Now, we know that Cain ended up killing Abel out of jealousy and anger and spite. He even was moody. And I want to remind you of this. Think about this. Cain didn't get the healing and reconciliation and the stuff he thought he did. Because remember, when God came back and said to Cain, it said, "Where is Abel?" What was Cain's response? Remember, Jen? What was his snide remark?
Am I my brother's keeper?
Yeah, he still had an attitude. He was still, meow, even though he had taken care of the problem. Now, our emotions hopefully would never lead to murder. But even after Cain took care of the problem, his emotions were still a hot mess. Mm-hmm. And I think people miss that's what God's saying. You could do it your way, but what you think in your head is going to bring you justice and peace and joy isn't. Yeah. You're still going to be emotionally a mess.
All right. So over on Facebook, you have Chrissy that says it is to use, so in the question, what does it mean to pull back from your emotions? Mm-hmm. To use your logic and spiritual belief to focus and make the right choice instead of acting on the emotions you have. Mm-hmm. All right. And then this one, I believe, is Emily. Not letting them take control and being able to see through them. Although you may be feeling something, it might not always be right.
Yep. I love that. That's the statement we hear. You could feel any type of way.
The feeling might not be based on truth.
But your feeling may not be true.
Yeah.
You could feel like the sky's purple. But if it's blue and everybody else saying it's blue, and you're insisting that it's purple, doesn't make you right.
Right.
And
let's just face it. Even in the story of Cain and Abel, what made Cain upset was his interpretation of what Abel was doing, which brought feelings up for him. And those feelings were very true to him, but they were based on an inaccurate assumption of what Abel was doing. Yeah. Abel was doing and following in obedience. It wasn't the acceptance of Abel's offering and the rejection of Cain's offering had nothing to do with Abel, had everything to do with what Cain brought, right?
Yeah.
But he let that build up the emotions against his brother, and so those emotions were very true. But how much would stopping and as God said, get out of your emotions to let the truth catch up, to logically think through things, because in our emotions, we don't always think logically, right? And that's the key. And honestly, like what you were saying, it even brought in, obviously it didn't deal with the emotion when he acted out of his emotions, didn't take care of the anger, didn't take care of the emotion. In fact, it probably added on more. It probably added on guilt and shame, because now you really made a mistake. You really blew it this time.
Yeah.
So we have Donna over on Facebook says, unless I am colorblind, then it is correct that it is purple to me.
The sky.
Oh, gotcha.
There you go.
Sorry, so that lost me.
And it is really fascinating to me to think of what did Cain go through before with the relationships, that seed of inadequacy, it was there, that seed that caused him to feel that emotion towards Abel, and I like what Chrissy says, and use that logic, because to sit back, sometimes to trace it back to what the true emotion is. Yeah. When we take our anger management courses here, we always trace anger back to one of three things: fear, frustration, or hurt feelings. And so they challenge us to study our anger or study our emotions and trace them back to find out where they come from.
Yep.
You know, and I always wonder what happened, because we don't know much about the interactions between Cain and Abel, and what happened in the household and under the roof. And so you have to ask yourself, what was the root of this emotion? Where did it come from? What did we have to handle? And so sometimes handling our hurt and our lack of forgiveness now is because we didn't deal with the one that originated.
Yep.
And that sometimes is a scary place to go, because for some of us, we have to talk about real abuse. We have to talk about real neglect. We have to talk about really, really horrible examples of love. We have to talk about parents doing unmentionable things. We have to talk about family being anything but family.
And sometimes we have to talk about where we've dropped the ball.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes our pride really gets in the way.
Yeah.
You know, of the fact, you know, and again, and even in this story, we kind of see that, you know, whatever the root of the relationship and things are, there's a reason why Cain gave the offering he did.
Yeah.
You know, and there might have already been emotions already tied to that.
Yep.
You know, I know that this isn't what is needed. I know that I'm trying to slide by with something, and now he's caught. And instead of taking the ownership of that, it's somebody else's fault.
Yeah.
Right?
That spirit of manipulation and the murderous, angry spirit.
We don't like to see our weaknesses out there. We don't like to see where we're cutting corners.
No.
You know? And you see that even in our Christian walk now. You know, whenever you hear passages or are reminded of a scripture verse that talks about the way we should talk, the way that we shouldn't gossip, the way that we should keep a tight rein of our tongue, the way that we should read our scriptures, you know, and know the Bible, you know, and whenever it's called out, it's like, well, so and so does this, you know, like, but does that have anything to do with whether or not you're doing it, you know? Yeah. So we do have a couple comments here. Over on YouTube, Lisa says, often I go through life thinking that everyone doesn't like me and that I said or did something wrong, but I'm working on realizing that it's often me overthinking and making things worse. Absolutely. Those times of getting away from the emotion and looking and focusing on the truth can really bring the proper perspective. And then I believe this is Diane over on Facebook. She says, if you find someone to talk to and accept insurance. So that just that idea of being able to step away from the emotions and process it through to the right thing and to trace it back to the right thing. And that takes self-control, that takes time, and that takes a good connection with the Lord many times for it to be truly effective.
And there's a common thing before we move on with our questions. Jen and I have something we often tell people, what is the common denominator? Yeah. And there's sometimes that people who walk in hurt and forgiveness are very good at pointing the fingers outwardly, but never being able to point the fingers inwardly. Mm-hmm. If your relationships tend to always have the same result, what is the common denominator? Is it the spirits that you match up with, or is it something within you? Mm-hmm. To think logically through why, when people say to me, you know, I lost a lot of friends and you know, over the years because of my anger. But while I was in anger, it was everybody else's fault. And now that I sit back all these years later and count the relationships that I compromised and sent away, that in itself was something that I had to forgive myself for and heal in. You know, and so I all those years I spent pointing the fingers at everybody else and not being willing to say I'm sorry and being willing to say it was me. Mm-hmm. Really, when you finally give it to God and God heals it, you have so many more layers to get healed because you didn't go to the right guy in the first place. Yeah. And you didn't accept his guidance and things like that. And it ends up so ugly and messy. And a lot of regrets that you have to deal with, you know. So let's head on to our discussion questions. We're coming down to the end here. listen to this scripture. I'm going to have my wife read this. This is the full thing. We read 36:4 before, but 36:4, but now we're going to read 36:1 through 4. Jen, could you read that for us?
Sure thing. Transgression speaks to the wicked deep in his heart. There is no fear of God before his eyes. For he flatters himself in his own eyes that his iniquity cannot be found out and hated. The words of his mouth are trouble and deceit. He has ceased to act wisely and to do good. He plots trouble while on his bed. He sets himself in a way that is not good. He does not reject evil.
This is...
Does it go on?
No.
Oh.
This is the characteristics of a person who doesn't walk in forgiveness and walks in hurt. And the thing that stands out to me the most is he plots evil in his bed. It's the opposite of what God said. Go ahead, be angry. But go be silent and really work out your emotions in your bed. Once again, he's saying the opposite here. The wicked person, the person that will never see change in forgiveness, will never see change in hurt, is a person who carries one or all these, or some of them. So I ask myself, and I ask you today, in reflection, do any of these resonate with you? Do any of these describe your heart? Do any of them describe the way you are when you're hurt, when you're angry, when you're emotional? Because what do you do with all that hurt? Not this.
Right.
And God says it in the very beginning. Be emotional, but do it in the proper place and bring it to me.
Yeah. And
then we get that assurance of your love and faithfulness reaches to the heavens, you know. That's okay. And so here is that statement to hold on again. Forgiveness is not made possible by our determination. Forgiveness is made possible by your cooperation with what God has already done for us. Will you cooperate with God because he's already forgiven us? Right?
Yeah.
And so that's what that means. It's like, no matter how much you determine to forgive in your own way and deal with your hurts in your own way, just like Cain did. Cain thought that murdering Abel was going to take care of it all. Sometimes we do set boundaries, but we set them with the wrong motive. I'm going to set this boundary so they know, and so they hurt.
Yeah.
I'm going to set this boundary so they know I'm mad. I'm going to set this boundary so they know that I'm offended. That's not the purpose of boundaries. Purpose of boundaries is to point you towards the best version of yourself. And why do we do that? And how do we do that? We do it because he first forgave us. And how do we do it? We forgive others as God has forgiven us.
Yep.
Right? And so as we finish up here with our last, here's the personal reflection for today. I want you to sit and pray if you have the time, and just take some time in your own prayer closet. Maybe you're emotional today, and I just want to share with you, if you're emotional today, what a great day to practice what he said. Go ahead and be emotional, but go find your private place and let's talk. Right? What are some ways unforgiveness can keep us from seeing the beauty in our lives? When you're hurt and walking in forgiveness, you can be pretty pessimistic. And then the second reflection, how could forgiveness help us start seeing beautiful again? Remember when God responded to Cain, if you do what is right. The original translation of right is to make it good or right or beautiful. If we are seeing things with a paintbrush of anger and jealousy and bitterness and rage and lack of forgiveness and lack of empathy and a lack of accountability to us, then beauty is going to be very, very, very warped in our lives. But God wants us to have an abundant life. And the Word of God says He will make all things beautiful in His time. Your name's not in that phrase. It's not, God will make all things beautiful in Chris's time, or Jen's time, or Lisa's time, or Lois's time, or Chrissy, or Donna, or Emily, or Diane, or whoever else is joining us. He'll make all things beautiful in His time. So let me encourage you. Don't be discouraged if you're doing what is right. Because God makes things beautiful in His time.
That's right.
You may be doing right and saying nothing's changing. Listen for the Lord's voice and watch carefully for His works, because His works are amazing and supernatural.
That's right.
And He will help you to set the boundaries that will help you become the best version of who you are. Remember that the wonderful Matthew 5:42. When somebody does something unfair to you, and I finish with this, when somebody takes unfair advantage of you, take it as an opportunity or an occasion to practice a servant life. Show them the best of you, not the worst of you.
That's right.
Because the best of you doesn't subtract from your joy and your peace and your love and your success.
That's right.
And your abundant life. So, look for those personal questions on Facebook and YouTube over the next days until we meet again next Tuesday afternoon, where we're going to continue in week 2 of our 6-week Bible study of Forgetting What I Can't Forget. And I hope that you've been blessed. If you watch us on a replay, please feel free to type in the comments and ask questions and all those type of good things. Thank you for taking your Tuesday afternoon being with us. We love you guys. Great hugs to you, and we are rooting for you to become the most beautiful and best version of yourself. God bless everybody.